All right, Larry Krueger here at Levi's Stadium after John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both spoke to the media one day after the roster got pared down to 53 men. And let's go through what Shanahan and Lynch had to say today. And of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. All right, Kyle Shanahan spoke first, so let's start with Shanahan. Basically he talked about how their 49ers at this point are looking at practice squad kickers. Jake Moody's got a quad injury, but they think it's a short-term injury and that Moody will be ready to roll, but they're still looking at practice squad kickers for the short term. They're not looking long-term because they think Moody's going to be healthy, but they are looking short-term at practice squad options right now. Danny Gray and Robert Beal Jr. are going to be moved to injured reserve, so with an ability to return. So that means their seasons are not done. Gray's got a clavicle or a shoulder. Beal's dealing with a knee injury, or a hammy, I should say. They want to get both those guys right, but they like both of them a lot, and they're putting them on injured reserve to start the year with the ability to come back. Shanahan was asked about Brock Purdy's, kind of lighter workload at the last practice, and just described this week as kind of a deloading week for Purdy. They're just trying to get him freshened up. It's all part of the original plan. There hasn't been any setback. They just want to get him freshened up for week one, and this week they decided to go low on his reps. As far as Nick Bosa, Shanahan commented, he said he thought it would come, that Bosa's signing would come right about now. He was asked if he could imagine Bosa not being on the team, and he said, hey, I can imagine anything. It's my job to imagine all scenarios, but he said hopefully we can come to terms soon. He was asked the question, would the 49ers consider trading Nick Bosa, and he quickly shot that down. He said, no way would we consider trading Nick Bosa. The 49ers did lose some players today to other teams around the NFL. Il Manning is now an Arizona Cardinal, which hurts. Deshaun Jameson is now a Carolina Panther, and Marcelino McCrary-Ball is now a New York Jet. As I asked him, about the team's run defense, because the last two preseason games, the Niners have gotten gashed against the run. And I asked him, I said, how much of a concern is the run D going into week one? And he said that if he was judging it just on the preseason games, that he would be very concerned. And then basically said, there were some reasons for it. There was a long run by Joshua Kelly that went 75 yards. There was a running quarterback that added to the stats as well. But he said, hey, we'd better be better versus the run, which is, no doubt. I mean, you could have all the Nick Bosas in the world, but if you can't stop the run on first and second down, you're never going to get to third and long. So he basically just said he's not that concerned. But if it was based on the preseason, he would be very concerned. He said he didn't like the way they stopped the run against the Raiders in the first game either, but really the last two games were not very good. And he just said, hey, we better be better against the run. As far as Ray McCloud, he said there was a chance that Ray McCloud could play week one. Said it's not decided yet on Ray McCloud. He's trying to work his way back from an injury. There's a chance he could be ready for Pittsburgh, which would be a big moment for Ray because he's a former Pittsburgh Steeler. Kyle was asked about how important the practice squad is, and he said it's vitally important. It's how they develop players. He said basically the practice squad guys are the third string guys. This has been a real positive development for the NFL. They used to have 10, they had 8, and then they had 10. Now they have 16 guys in the practice squad. They used to have only young guys in the practice squad. Now it's young guys and older guys. So the practice squad is very much like a developmental spot now for NFL teams because there is no minor league system. He was asked about Jalen Graham being the backup Mike linebacker, and he said no. He said he wanted to keep it a secret, wouldn't want to name who his backup Mike linebacker was. And then he was asked about how well Jalen Graham has played, and he said obviously he played well enough to make the team. So Graham, I think he's underselling it. Graham was awesome. Graham was absolutely awesome this summer. Deshaun Jameson. He was asked about if Jameson, who started really fast this summer, if he lost momentum late in the camp, and he kind of admitted that he did, but he also said he really wanted him back for the practice squad, and obviously they didn't get him back, so it's kind of a bummer that he's now in Carolina. He also said he wanted Il Manning back, but that Arizona made a number of claims on 49er players, and so they wind up losing Il Manning. And then the presser ended when I think Tim Kawakami asked him about Jimmy Garoppolo's comments about how it's been a weird situation in San Francisco and how they've dealt with quarterbacks. And then he mentioned Trey's comments as well. And Kyle said that he got a chance to watch Trey's presser, and he said that Trey really gets it. That he seemed happy and that he didn't go rip the Niners or anything like that. As far as Jimmy's comments, at first he said, it has been a weird situation. And then he said, I wouldn't necessarily call it weird. I would call it more unusual. So then we debated at the end of the presser the difference between weird and unusual. But that was the summation of the Shanahan presser. As far as John Lynch sat down and said he was real happy with the 53-man roster and the process which led them to finalizing the 53-man roster. He said that him and Kyle sat down individually with every single player that they either said goodbye to or moved to the practice squad. He says he really loves the 16-man practice squad and the vets. It's a mix of veterans and developmental players. And he really said that he really liked it. And of course, all general managers are going to love the practice squad because it allows you to continue to develop more players that you're obviously going to need. This is, there's a lot of injuries in football, and there's no question the Niners are going to need many of those guys who are on their practice squad currently. Now, they did name a 16-man practice squad today. It's almost entirely made up of players that were in camp with the 49ers. That could change a little bit over the next couple weeks as they start to look at players that were cut in other camps, but it looks like they're leaning on a lot of the players they had in camp this summer for their practice squad. For Jake Moody's name came up to John Lynch, and he said that his recovery from the quad injury is going very well. And then he described Jake Moody as a rare talent who thinks, Lynch thinks that, Moody's going to be the Niners kicker for years to come. So they're clearly, all in on Jake Moody. They're looking at other kickers, but that's all short-term stuff. Probably not Robbie Gould. He didn't say Robbie Gould's name, but he kind of he kind of painted the picture of, hey, we're looking at some practice squad kickers maybe for week 1 or early in the year, but they think Moody's recovery is going well from his quad and he'll be out there soon enough. I asked him about Nick Bosa. I said, is there any % chance at all that you would trade Nick Bosa? And John said there's 0% chance that the Niners would consider trading Bosa. He said there was no update on the Bosa contract situation in the holdout. He said he's still communicating with Bosa's agent, and he admitted that he was surprised that it's taken this long to get this deal done. He was asked about the backups at defensive end, because if you don't have Nick Bosa, you got to have somebody for week 1. And John told us at that point that Robert Beal has been moved to IR. He said about Beal, he said he's a guy that we really like. But they do have other defensive ends. Drake Jackson, Cleveland Farrell. He said he's a Niner. We love the way he plays. He plays hard. Kerry Hyder, Austin Bryant, he said was a great scheme fit. So those are their backups now. Jackson, Farrell, Hyder, and Bryant. He basically told us something we already knew, which was that Cameron Latou is going to have surgery on his knee, and that he's done for the season. That he got better in training camp, and that they're committed to, or they're excited, I should say, about Cam Latou's future. John went on to say he really likes the quarterback room that they have currently. He likes the quality of the room. He likes the depth of the room. He admitted that he was very upset that they lost Deshaun Jameson and Il Manning. Jameson is obviously now in Carolina. Manning's with Arizona. He talked about how he really likes the fact that they've got options on the practice squad at wide receiver. He's got Tay Martin and Isaiah Winstead, 2 young receivers that they really like and they'd like to develop. And then he's got Willie Snead and Chris Conley, 2 veterans that are ready to play right now. And he likes to have that balance. He said he was thrilled with Brock Purdy and everything about the way Purdy's gone about his business. He said this week is just a way to kind of freshen up Purdy for week 1. He said that Brock has not had any setbacks at all. He was also asked at the end of the presser about Brock, and he said, hey, look, he's a quick processor. He makes good decisions. He's very poised. If there's one thing that surprises John about Brock, it's the escapability quickness that he showed last year. He said he didn't really anticipate that kind of escapability. And that goes back to that 1-5-4 10-yard split that Purdy had, leading into the draft. He can escape and create, off schedule because he can get away from NFL defensive linemen. Dave Lombardi asked him about the cap room available, and John said, hey, we're in a good spot there, salary cap room wise. They'll be in a better spot when they can get Bosa signed. But he says that we have money to do the things that we may need to do as the season progresses, obviously hinting at, a potential trade that could come later in the year that would add a significant player. He also went on to say he doesn't think that Isaiah Oliver had a shaky preseason, that despite that being the common wisdom, that he kind of disagrees. He thinks that Oliver offers the 49ers versatility, the ability to play the slot corner as well as the safety. He said Oliver can play safety as well. I asked him about the new addition. The 49ers signed Shamar Jean-Charles, a cornerback who's played the last couple of years in Green Bay, played his college ball at Appalachian State. John said that what they really liked about him, that their pro personnel scouts, huddled on him, and what they really liked is that he's got versatility. He can play outside and play the outside corner and play the boundary. He can also play the slot. They said they really like his speed. He's got outstanding speed, and he also has special team experience. So those are the things that kind of stood out. So that was it. That was the good, the bad, the ugly from Shanahan and Lynch down here in Santa Clara. 49ers will have a light week of practice, and then next week is a preparation for Pittsburgh. So hope you enjoyed the breakdown of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Once again, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.